figure that trick out.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were going to talk about emotional chasers, but instead...
Hand in the hands trick, see?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You won't want to do this with a knife.
This was pre cell phones in elementary school.
Yeah, we had the...
Oh, that's magic.
Yeah. We just had the spin around the thumb one, you know, this little guy.
Oh, yeah, we had that too. I could never figure that out. See, it's...
Yeah. That's just... Well, now that I'm a master's too, I know these things.
That's right, because you know why?
Why?
It's Eric Beach's 40th birthday.
Oh,
I just
put
announced
the plastic
that
case.
to the world.
Pew, 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 air horn, crazy flashes of light, and no. I'm happy about it. It's good. I wanted to do this on my birthday. I mean, it'll air on Monday, but it is Friday, November 17th, and I'm officially 40 years old. I think exactly because I was born around now. I don't know. Either way, I'm turning 40 today. And Adam, he asked, oh, by the way, this is My Modern Myth. I'm Adam, and this is Eric.
Yeah,
I went
Eric.
Senile. I mean. Turned 40, and the wheels come off.
You are truly a master.
Yeah, I'm
and
Eric.
I'm here as well.
I'm getting esoteric. Is Adam really Adam?
Yeah, Atoms make up everything.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what they do too.
Until next time, journey well, my friends. So instead of that, let's talk about emotional chasers, because I believe on this journey through the years, and I think my 40s are going to be solid, because I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this, but it feels like the 20s were kind of wild in a lot of senses. The 30s were like, let's start to think a little bit more critically, like we are adults now, maybe we should figure some things out. And then the 40s kind of take that momentum and actually take action on it. And I think as a kid, you hear that song, what was it, Always Wear Sunscreen? And you think of some of the most interesting 40-year-olds still don't know what they want to do with their life. And you're like, no. I need to know this by 20.
Guilty.
Yeah. It's like, we're still trying to figure it out, man. But part of the figuring it out is the I don't want to say self-actualization, because that's like the pinnacle, transcend and become a spirit or whatever. But there is this level of chasing that. And the way we chase it is through emotion. It's through inner work, and that can be really heavy. And just like when I was drinking, even when I was, binge drinking, Jack and Coke tasted better than Jack Daniels. Taking a shot of tequila tasted better when I took, the salt and the lime. There are chasers for a reason, because the alcohol going down, the poison, is tough to swallow. And it gets stuck in your throat. Like that burn is right there in your throat. The feeling of throwing up is right there in your throat unless you take a chaser. And that just kind of eases it all down. Now, this is a debaucherous destruction of the ego. That's why we get smashed, we get bombed, we get obliterated. It's all destructive terminology, because we're essentially destroying the ego and becoming someone else. So in this conversation, Adam, I'm talking about emotional chasers, because the emotions get stuck where? In our throat. It feels like there's a fire in our belly, and it's just stuck here because we don't, and then we constrict when we cry. Like you can't cry and talk with your throat open. It's like singing. You can't, when an artist sings, they feel that constriction. They can't sing unless they can push through and open. Well, now they can work, but that's through years of practice. You can't just, you know what, I'm going to listen to my emotions today and then transcend it and heal. And this is long.
You mean I can't just buy an acoustic guitar and start singing like a professional, like right away?
Well, you can, but most people can't.
Okay.
You have to factor that in. You're not normal, okay? You're a superhuman. You're an alien.
Well, I'm also 44.
Well,
so
see,
I've got
you
a
have
few years.
You have a few years of wisdom that I haven't even contemplated yet. So bear with me, and I appreciate your kindness to not lording that over my head.
I am a master too, Eric Beach. So
hallelujah. So the emotional chaser, in this context, I'm going to talk through 5. I think there's plenty of other ones, but I wanted to focus on 5 of them because it's this idea of we avoid emotion because they burn, they hurt. But if we have things that can allow that hurt to diminish, we can get drunk on healing. No, I don't want to use that as my tagline.
that's a Dave. Yeah, drunk on healing. Get totally high on personal development. Yeah.
That sounds like a really bad dare campaign from like the
It does.
90s.
Yeah.
Get high on healing. Or I want to get chocolate milk wasted from, what was that?
Chocolate milk wasted. Oh
It was an Adam Sandler movie. I forget what it was called.
Oh, was it Billy
Adults
Madison?
Yeah, it was one of the later ones.
Oh, okay.
He was like, when talking about getting wasted and his kids are there and they're like, what's wasted? It's when you drink too much milk. And then the little 4-year-old's like, I want to get chocolate milk wasted. It's adorable.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But the first one that I want to talk about is engaging in conversation in relationship with trusted allies. And an ally is someone who is committed to the same path that you're walking. They don't have to be walking the same path financially, socially, sport-wise, whatever, but they're dedicated to growth and in self-reflection. They're dedicated to ownership. You know, the tenets of this show and this community is that element of ownership, it's vulnerability, it's growth, and it's laughter. So all of those have to be shared with that ally or a small group of allies so they can push you, hear you, laugh with you, disconnect, reconnect. All of those things are the emotional chaser, because if I have done this, I have canceled this show because the emotions are running hot in me. And instead of just hiding, I engage through an emotional chaser by contacting you and say, hey, Adam, I can't do the show. Can you just call me? Mm-hmm. And then you've called me and we had a really great conversation because I just needed that outlet, and it needed to not be recorded, but to have it by myself, it burned. But because I trust you and you can hear me and validate things that need to be validated, question things that need to be questioned, and relate to things that need to be related, it goes down. That emotion goes down, and I can understand what I need to do next. So trusted allies, that's the first one.
I'm always here to go down your throat when you need it.
Hey-o. I don't know. I want to pivot from that one. What? I guess something else got stuck in my throat.
Yeah. Am I soda or am I lime or am I salt?
You're my salt and my lime, Adam.
All right, good. I'm always here to be your salt and lime.
You're always here to be my gag reflex. Laughter, right?
Right.
But no, it's serious though. Like, laughter is very serious, which is funny to say, but it's very
serious. Key. We need to get drunk on responsible laughter. That's what we need to do. Yes.
You look like the police officer that would say that. We need to get drunk on laughter.
That's like the PSA that they would do. This is Sergeant Mike McCullough, and I'm asking you to get drunk on responsibility.
Getting high on the spirit. It's like it could go either way, dare or church. Like the youth group, trying to be relatable to the youth. Those aren't your allies necessarily, because they're not. That's a good example of that person wasn't going to make an impact on me because I knew nothing about them. We weren't in the same place in life. I didn't speak my language, but my peers at the time did. And what I've realized about allies versus peers, allies are the ones that are linking arms with you going into the journey. Peers are just ones that are willing to commiserate and create a bond that's absent of growth. And you can do that. And when you do that, it's all victim and accusing. Those are the two masks that these people are wearing. It's either you're victimized or they're the problem, not you. We bond over that. We have a relationship. We can sustain that. Not a single one of us is going to grow in that. And that becomes really uncomfortable. And when that discomfort rises, I go to my peers and then we can commiserate. So I stay stuck and I'm like, you know what? You're right. That person does suck. And you know why? Because now I'm remembering, oh, they did this. And that, see, I told you. And all of a sudden we start to commiserate. We start to gossip and we fabricate stories that reinforce that narrative by bending truth. An ally is someone who's going to challenge you and ask, is that really how it went down? Like, or they're going to just be like, dude, that does suck because it did suck. The situation wasn't great. And sometimes you just need to acknowledge that, before you go back out and shake it off and lick those wounds, and nothing else. Don't lick anything else. Just move, forward.
Those are not the chasers you want to. Those are not the chasers you're after.
You do not want to chase those chasers.
No.
Another one that you might want to chase is exercise. That is, for me, the most immediate and accessible chaser, emotional chaser that we all have access to, and in fact should be number one. But I just put this note together, this list together haphazardly, because it's my birthday and I didn't want to sit and structure it that way. Just whatever came to mind, whatever.
Structure anything the way you want it to on your birthday. That's the way you do it.
I'm a master's too.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a
You
big
could make
old 40-year-old.
You can make a pyramid that looks like a trapezoid. Do it.
Yes. Shapes. Exercise. This is an exercise in futility, it feels like, when I'm trying to rationalize myself and my mistakes.
Yeah.
Exercise is one of the first ones because it doesn't rely on anybody else. This is something you get to do. And an ally is someone that you have to develop. And how do you find allies? Sometimes it's through moving your body and doing things that you can do to improve yourself. That allows you to put yourself into situations where others can be on that same path. And then, you're going to find allies in jiu-jitsu and karate and triathlon, in the gym, anywhere. You can find it if you start moving your body and listening for those people to identify themselves. And have you found those two? I want to talk more about exercise, but I don't want to overstep in if you had anything to say, but I think allies and exercise are very related.
I think you're right. And as you're saying that, I was thinking exactly that. It's like in my own experience, in my story, I was always one who always tried to go it alone. And, and as you'd imagine, as an alcoholic, that didn't really work very well. I even like to drink alone. I mean, I didn't even really like to commiserate. I just like to hide it from everybody and just drink. And so the idea of going into a recovery or anything like that, or Alcoholics Anonymous, just didn't resonate because I was a quote unquote introvert that didn't like doing stuff. But, once I got into triathlon, I got sober, and I found the community. I found that the allies that existed that were working and walking arm in arm towards the same direction, really leveled up that aspect for me when I did get sober. So that was an important part of it. And I would say that community feels like a first important chaser. But then the exercise, like when I got into exercise, I found an entirely new community, which is really ultimately how I met you, Eric Beach, back in your young, whippersnapper 30s. And those were the days. And I wouldn't have met you if it weren't for sport, And I would almost bet that the opposite or that the reverse is true too. So and
one funny thing about that, you said we went to meet each other. The other part is and this is going to sound weird, if you weren't an alcoholic and I wasn't struggling with addiction as well. Like if we didn't have that struggle, we wouldn't have met each other because we both applied to a show,
right? Not
because we were just crushing life, but because we struggled through it and then through triathlon kind of reestablished that momentum. So it's things happen, you have to give it meaning. So I just wanted to point that interesting bit out too.
It is, yeah, that is interesting. That came up a couple times on a couple of other podcasts that I was doing earlier, which was like, well, you have all of these things that you went through, these things that you regret, but do you truly regret having gone through them, like having experienced them? I mean, I think that the idea of having like that time machine that you can go back in time and change things and say like, I didn't have to go through that struggle, but now you're taking a gift away from yourself. I mean, it sounds horrible for me to say like, I'm so grateful. I'm so glad that I went through, that I put my friends and family through so much trauma and struggle during those times when I was drinking heavily. I'm so glad I did that.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, like when I really think it through, I regret my actions, of course, but it's like I'm grateful for the person I became because of having gone through that and recovered from it. I wouldn't change a thing now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's perspective. It really is, and exercise, it helped me gain that perspective. And I think a lot of people can share this, but they maybe don't know how to apply it. That people will be uncomfortable running from trauma, whatever their situation is. They'll get into exercise and they'll find the escape of that, and they'll continue to chase the escape, missing the ability to look at the exercise as a microcosm of their life and the way they live it, and beyond that, the next one is kind of connected as well to exercise, and that is meditation, because getting still and quiet and listening is a lot easier to do once you've moved your body and you get some of those positive chemicals that aren't from cigarettes, they're not from alcohol, they're not from drugs, they're not from, I don't know, any kind of activity that's not for your best good but still gives you that dopamine.
Yeah.
Because when you get that objectivity, you get that dopamine, you can look at the thing, the problem, the feeling, the memory with a little bit more peace.
Yeah.
And it's easier to sit still once you have that peace. It's easier to be not flustered by the dishes on the counter, the comment from the kid, the whatever thing that was done to you. It's easier to reflect on that, even if it happened that day and you're pissed off about it. Go for your training, your jiu-jitsu, your run, your bike ride, reflect on it. And afterwards, I guarantee you're going to be able to think of it with more objectivity and more ownership, not to excuse the other person, but to understand the only thing you can do is decide what you're going to do about the situation. And that's why I understand that I'm glad it happened. I'm glad I took the action I took after it happened. That's
right.
what I'm grateful for. And without the inciting incident, I don't take that action. And we're living in chaos. I mean, it's a world of conflict. And
right.
I don't like seeing the damage I cause to my family when it pops up. Does it happen all the time? No, but it does happen. Mm-hmm. You know, my wife just went through something where, you know, this was sort of anniversary time for when I had a plan to commit suicide. She felt a lot of things, a lot of feelings around that part of our marriage, rightfully so. She's also has to make time to process that as well. And I let her process it, but I could easily just be like, you need to get over it. It's how many years ago, you know, stop holding me. No, that's not my response. That can't be my response. Mm-hmm. I did, but it's the reason we respond that way, whether it's our children or anyone, is because we don't want to look at ourselves as having ever hurt somebody, because ultimately we're good people. We can't accept that we're the problem, that we caused hurt, but we did. We're humans. We're capable of it. And now that we're evolving into this higher mastery of self, we cannot be reminded of all of the things we did wrong, all of the people we hurt. We couldn't have been the jerk in this situation. Surely the sainted Eric is above and beyond reproach.
Yeah.
He's not.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting because that seems like it's part of the society we're in right now, which I don't really like that. And maybe I'm the one who's wrong on this, but I see a lot of that, like, changing of history right now in the broader society, of like saying, oh, we're going to just remove this from the historical records because it was so bad and pretend it never happened. And it never was. And it's just like, well, do we really want to do that? Or do we want to acknowledge that, yes, it was not a great part of our history, and acknowledge and celebrate the fact that we've come so far since then? I'm wondering which is best, to ignore it, suppress it, push it down, and pretend it never happened, or, like, you know, or move or work to heal and move past it and acknowledge that it happened and actually heal from it. I don't know. It doesn't. I'm having a hard time realizing which one is the right way to go.
Well, this is the conversation. We can go there, because the reality is, you're talking about triggers.
Yeah.
And we run from triggers, and we confuse a trigger, which is a very triggering word in and of itself.
Yeah, it's triggering me.
I know, right? Here we go.
It's triggering my trigger response. Yes.
The trigger. The problem we're running into is when people are triggered by a statue or by a part of history that's not pretty, mm-hmm. their trigger is telling them the world has to change for their comfort. Mm-hmm. No. The trigger is your cue that you need to change your inner world. There's something being hurt inside you that you need to deal with, because there are a lot of people on this earth, and there's no way that we can insulate the entirety of it so that you are comfortable, so that I am comfortable. And that was the greatest pain point that I felt that initiated my change. Was I noticed people were walking on eggshells around me, because I was the guy at the party that if I got triggered, I'd get pissed, or they don't want to worry that I get suicidal or depressed. And so they modified who they were around me, which made me feel unloved It made me feel unwelcome. It made me feel unseen and alone. So I went home depressed until I found out through honest conversation that's what they were doing. They didn't want to hurt me. They didn't want to trigger me. And I said, that sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. I want to be resilient enough that no matter what is said or done, I can emotionally and consciously work my way through it. But we're conflating our need to heal and resolve what's inside of us with a call to external resolution. External resolution is almost never the solution because it's a demand that someone else changes when we're the only ones that can change. So if I bring a balanced point to you and say, children shouldn't work for free, you should have a child labor law. This is a balanced, realistic conversation. But if I'm upset because I'm not, my hours at Starbucks are 4 hours is too much for me and people aren't nice all the time. That's not something we can insulate. That's not something that we need to cry out and call for someone else to change. That's something we have to understand. Well, what is really bothering you about this? Why are you having such a strong emotional response? The emotional chaser says, get out, move your body, get it with trusted allies, not your peers, your allies that aren't going to just commiserate with you. Move your body, meditate, whatever you have to do. The next one is get into art to music, something that moves your spirit, moves your soul, and disconnects you from it and might let new information in. That's because art is sneaky like that. It'll break through all your defenses and get you right in the teeth, get you right in the heart. And all of a sudden you're crying and you had no idea why. And you're the toughest person on earth, but you're crying at Homeward Bound because here comes Shadow, like Linda, oh yeah, it'll catch you. But you have to do that so that you can then go understand what is really bothering you. Because it's not the lady who yelled at you at Starbucks. That wasn't right what she did. But the reaction to that is what is or isn't right for you and a marker of your health on this journey. If I'm upset about, I don't know, there's so many issues that we could look at. But I think, rewriting history is one conversation that we can probably never solve because we're just taking notes and writings and deciding what's true, what's not out of context of that day and age. So it's really hard. Archaeology as a whole. Yeah. I go, really? That piece of pottery, you know that's a ceremonial pottery for the birthright of the 13-year-old who, suffered scoliomardroninus and was healed in the slayer ghost of the... Really? How do you... Well, you can tell because there's a triangle on this, and triangles in that historic symbolic, there's a big leap that we take. Yeah. And to live and die by that is the problem. And the reason that you're living and dying by it is because your connection to your value in this life is your intellect. And if that intellect is challenged, you don't have a place in this society. So you need to realize that you can make mistakes and that you don't know. So for me to listen to someone who I disagree with, if I get pissed about that, that's for me to own. That's for me to take an emotional chaser and figure out why. Is it because I feel stupid? Well, why do I feel stupid? Why do I need to feel smart? These are the conversations you go train, you go meditate on, and you go converse with your allies. If it's not working, you take 10 minutes to watch the funniest YouTube video you can find that is almost making fun of yourself, or you guarantee will laugh. Yeah. Take a moment and now re-engage with it. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that that pot is probably for just the king to poop in. Probably, I think that's what all pots were for back then. Is the kings just pooped in them? Yes, and, the bedpan. That's what it was. That's what it was for. But yeah, I mean, I think that victim piece is important because each of us internally, it's like when we feel victimized for whatever it might be. It might be legitimately victimized, and that's I don't want to dismiss that, but I think one of the things that minimizes it is if we're constantly calling foul on things that aren't necessarily like we're expecting the world to accommodate us for our small world kind of mentality of how the world should be, and we're frustrated. It only makes the world smaller for us. It only makes us more frustrated. So, like you're saying, Eric, I completely agree. that's where we need to get ourselves and reflect on that. And it's even bigger of you if you have that big, that big way in which you might have been victimized, like maybe legitimately in some way. I hate to say it, and it sounds callous, but you still own that as well. We have to heal from those things because, yeah, maybe we were wronged, but if we're continuing to identify with that, that's going to be the problem. So I love this direction we're going. That it's community, it's finding those allies, and finding the exercise, finding the art and music, and those things that can be those emotional chasers for us to help us through that. Because they only make us stronger. They make us more capable of dealing with the things that may be presenting us as challenges in the future, and helping us to get beyond them.
It does. And to clarify that point, I mean, I've been victimized. I've been abused in ways. There's a hierarchy here that it says, if I'm talking to somebody and I have this abuse, but they have suffered it to a higher degree, that somehow it invalidates mine. That's like an internal conversation. Yeah. Some people will overtly say, like, you've never been through anything in your life, so you don't have a right to feel so, hurt. That's not true, first of all, because if you're disturbed by it, it is a trauma. Right. There's not a scale. It's just, did it disturb you? That's what trauma means. If it didn't disturb you, it wasn't a trauma. Then if you have a trauma, it's going to elicit a trauma response because you're disturbed. So that's the only criteria. But if you were, by the world's eyes, not my eyes, by the world's eyes, traumatized in a terrible way by an abuser, the ownership that you're talking about is so true, but it needs to be taken with a chaser because it sounds like you're blaming the victim. It's not that. The thing happened, right? It happened. So the ownership is after. What are you going to do? And some people will replicate the situation. They'll replay it in their own kind of a prison. And sometimes, I mean, that's a really in-depth mental psychosis. Like, that's a really serious loop to be stuck in. But it plays out in a lot more innocent ways as well, because you create a worldview that says, if I hide, I won't be abused as a kid. And then as an adult, you're like, if I hide, if I don't get attention, then I'm safe. And so you will construct stories that make you fail everything you do, so you never rise to that level, or you start to rise and someone says something mildly offensive because they're just words. Oh, I knew it. I shouldn't have done this. Yep, I'm going to run away. That's what I'm talking about from a very functional standpoint. And that's what you're saying is, if we've been hurt, we are the ones and the only ones who can take steps. Even if you go to a therapist, you can lie to that therapist and nothing changes. I've seen plenty of people try. I did everything I could. Well, did you? Yeah. Well, why didn't it work? Well, the therapist sucked. I'm like, you went with that attitude? Right. Well, okay. You gave it. You tried, man. What can I say? Good effort. No, you have to be the one who makes that decision. And these emotional chasers are very effective tools to allow you to do that. But you have to engage in them with that intent. It's okay to escape, though, because sometimes we need to. I've been on plenty of really hard runs and rides and rounds where I just wanted my mind as far away as possible from whatever it was. I needed to, quote unquote, escape my life for just a few minutes. There's a price that you pay for that. And there is some level of unhealth because you are literally flagellating yourself. You are beating yourself up in that moment. And if that becomes your routine, it can look good. There's some triathletes that I've seen do this where it looks honorable, but it looks like they're punishing themselves over and over.
Sorry. I have this allergy where I cough Goggins when I hear
yeah. But it's like it becomes an identity. And it really does look good. Like it looks honorable because of the attitude that's brought to it. And that's what I'm saying about this commiserating is, as long as your attitude seems empowered, you look like you're empowered to a lot of people. You're just really tough. Or the people that say, well, I'm just an asshole. This is who I am. Well, what are you doing about that?
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a very simple rule for life, and this is simplifying. I recognize this is simplifying the heck out of it, but it's kind of a starting point for where I try to set a baseline. is a rule for happiness: don't get offended and don't offend. Like those are just the two things. It's just like, okay, if I recognize, I mean, like I might be triggered on something or like feel like I'm like been wronged or something like that. But that just reminds me too that, okay, well, asking the questions that you're asking, Eric, like where is that hitting me? Why is that hitting me? How can I change my response or address the situation so that I can come out of this feeling of being offended or triggered or what have you, so that I can live my life happiness? And usually the answer is dad jokes, but I'm only half joking there. But but then on the don't offend part, it's like, okay, and also be conscious that, you don't have to go around just saying like, okay, well, because I don't ever get offended, I'm going to go around presuming that nobody else does as well, and everybody else is having the same kind of day that I am, so I'm just going to be as blunt as possible and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like there's a careful balance that we can play there, where we can kind of live in harmony, but and it kind of gets us out of ourselves in some ways, but it's more simple than it actually is, but starting point.
It is. And to that point, the balance is this. In 2002, I graduated high school, and I believe that is the tipping point of the offense. It's where the culture got to a certain point where certain things were happening, probably school shootings, lots of bullying behaviors. But up until that point, we had hazing. When I was in middle school, when you were in 8th grade and going in to be a freshman, you had to watch out the last day of school because the high schoolers would be in pickup trucks with paddles and they would chase down I don't know how they knew we were in 8th grade versus but it was somehow, it's like something happened.
It's a very coordinated list of like a spreadsheet, a matrix.
Here is the dossier on the current 8th graders. And so it was a scary day, right? Right. But it was this rite of passage, whatever. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it. To me, I had no interest in participating. So it wasn't my thing, but I wasn't like, oh, this down with the establishment. Mm-hmm. And then you get into high school and that stuff went on. The seniors would do stuff to the freshmen, tape you to a football pole or whatever. And just, it was their last day of school and there were certain things that they did. And then I get to be a senior. And my junior year, I believe one of the kids got taped to a tree for the entire day.
Oof.
And then it came out that there's all these terrible hazing rituals where the senior girls were made to sit in these pools and had to suck on a pacifier while they got oatmeal poured on them or cereal or something. It was just weird. I don't even understand so all of a sudden all this stuff became very scrutinized, and we had an assembly where the vice principal stood up and he yelled at the seniors. We hadn't even really done anything at that point, but he was saying, if any of you engage in any of these hazing rituals that have gone on for God knows how long, I will throw the book at you. I will bury you. And so our senior class, the T-shirt read, if you're offended, I'm suspended. Because if you did anything to offend an underclassman, you would be suspended from school. And so that was, for me, the mark of like, oh, things are changing, not in a great way. So for my senior year, we couldn't run through the halls. The last day we had to do the senior walk, and we couldn't bang on the lockers. And I thought it was the last day of school was always epic because the seniors would run through the hall screaming and just beating on all the metal. And it was like a parade and everyone's looking out the window, but someone might fall and get trampled. Those never happened, but someone might get hurt and we don't want to disrupt learning. Yeah. And I'm like, And so we had to walk and silently walk through the halls as a group of 200 kids.
Yeah.
And the girls could write O2 for 2002 on the freshmen's cheeks, face cheeks, not butt cheeks.
Okay.
You get suspended for that.
I was getting a little, yeah.
I know. I had to clarify there. But if we couldn't do it. And so then I go to the Army, and that's 2003. 2004, when I get back from Iraq, we find out we can't sing certain cadences anymore because they have curse words in them, because they're derogatory. You're in a profession where you're training to kill people and put your life in a position where you might very well die. There is a mentality that comes with that, but the cadences were too offensive for people on post. So we couldn't sing certain ones. We did, but we weren't allowed to. And now I think basic training's different. Everything's different. And it's all towards this comfort. And it eliminates the realistic need for high stress learning in certain situations. Every situation? No. You don't need to scream at me during algebra class. You don't need to throw a garbage can at me. But in wartime training, you need to understand the chaos of stress and still problem solve. That was the point. It's not, if a guy has to yell at you, then they're not an effective leader. Well, that's true, unless stress is a part of the job that you have to get comfortable with. So the disagreement comes in that everything has gotten to be more about whatever is uncomfortable needs to be suppressed. We're in a comfort-driven society, and those easy times breed comfort, and that comfort breeds soft men. Soft men breed hard times, and hard times breed strong men, and strong men build soft times, and soft times breed soft men. It's a cycle that we go through over
keep going.
and over.
No, keep going. Keep going.
For the next 5 hours. It's just, this is a song that never ends.
Right.
So the contrast to that is you have that softening, but then you have the diehards. You snowflake. That's just the opposite side of sensitivity. It's the aggressive sensitive, because those people are equally offended. They just have the image of bolstering so hard that they must be above, that sensitivity. They're not snowflakes. I'm yelling at you instead of crying, or I'm not crying about my sensitivity. I'm calling you pathetic and weak.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways, right?
Right. That's an it's an interesting perspective, because I never thought about it that way, that even the people that are quote unquote doing the offending are also now offended, but they're just lashing out in a different way. While one might be just offended and like reverting, the other might be just like acting out and angry because they can no longer do this thing. And I see that time frame that you're talking about, that 2002, and it hits for me too. I think that feels about right, because back when I was in high school, I graduated from high school in 1997, and back in my day, we had a trip in our senior year where we went down to Baja, Mexico, like the middle of Baja, in the middle of nowhere. It was a camping trip where they would take high school students, male and female, down to the beach on the Sea of Cortez in the middle of nowhere in the Mexican desert for 10 days. Teachers and students. What could possibly go wrong? Right. Except, a
lot of Bajaing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was, but I mean, it was like, aside from like the obvious, like, oh yeah, like we were stoked to like be in a camping trip with it was a school sponsored trip in another country that was known for like beheading tourists, and it was camping, and we had to like catch what we ate, and like we didn't bring any food or water down there, so there was a lot of like living off of the land, and there was a lot of like fear around it. But we went down there, and like it was the first transformational experience I've ever gone through, because it was like, wow, I can survive that. That was the most amazing experience of my life, because there was like risk associated with it. We learned a lot. We were in the moment, and all this kind of stuff. And then, around 2001 or 2002, they cut the cord on it. They said, no, it's too dangerous to be doing that. Something we've been doing for 50 years. Yeah. Like the school had been doing for 50 years. All of a sudden, no more anymore. You guys can go down to the beach in Dana Point for the day and go collect shells. That was literally what they said. And it took every piece of like what the education was out of it, because the education wasn't like learning what the seashells were. It was about learning how to live off the land, learning to kind of like it was like you're saying, a rite of passage into adulthood. And we took that away. And it was just like, it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, we removed the discomfort from like what we want to do. Because why? Well, because certain parents might get offended or scared because their kids, even though they signed a permission slip, if something had happened to them, it's like, oh my gosh, not our little darling. They can't be exposed to that kind of stuff.
It's not possible to avoid all risk. And removing risk, I understand it. It just always goes too far. Everything goes too far. So maybe we won't put the baby in the back windshield of the car. Maybe we'll make a car seat and put the baby in that. That's appropriate. That's reasonable to me. Keeping them in the car seat until they're 18 would be too far. At some point, you can get out of the car seat. But there's a feeling of overprotecting. And I feel it too, because I almost bought into it to some degree where I don't want anything bad to happen to my children.
Right.
And I have to constantly tell myself, like, let them take risks. So even if they go around the block by themselves, I'm scared. I used to be, because, I just know it. This bad thing's going to happen. They're taking too long to get home. Something happened. Well, that's for me to deal with. I need an emotional chaser. I need a dose of reality and understanding that we always have to risk. Like, that's just part of life. I risk my life every time I go to class because there's traffic. I mean, you can't get away from it. Right. So I have to take the responsibility to say, should I not let my children go outside, or should I figure out why I'm so afraid, or how I'm feeling like I'm failing my kids if I expose them to any kind of danger? That's for me. And on the other side of that, the over-aggressive, what bully wants to accept that they're a bully? Mm-hmm. What person wants to accept that they are hurting people? No one really wakes up expressly intent, to go hurt people. We all generally want to be good people. We just don't understand that the velocity of our feelings projected outward isn't appropriate. Emotions are meant to be a guiding force for us, not to project onto others. And so with people who are strong warrior and fighting, they think they're fighting the good fight, even if it goes too far. Storming the Capitol probably wasn't the most appropriate thing to do, but all of those people really felt that they were patriots saving the country. Mm-hmm. Just like people who lie down in front of vehicles because people use gasoline believe they're saving the world. What they're all doing is confusing a journey inward with an adventure outside themselves to do an act, whatever it is, to atone for the sins of internal, failing to internally journey, and understand that it's not really about changing the world. It's about changing your world. And when you change your world, you'll bring more peace to this world. And that's when the world changes. But if we're always fixing something outside and not having a conversation, we rob ourselves of human connection. And that's why a strong emotional response robs us of conversation, and it kills any chance of human connection. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it's sensitive or aggressive.
I think tying this into the idea of the emotional chasers is an important one, because it feels like just the straight shot of emotion comes from just like taking that activity, that thing that offended us, or that thing that hurt us, or punched us in the gut, or whatever, and just turning ourselves in that direction and just running headlong into it and fighting against it. It sounds like that's a recipe for disaster. Does that sound like it? Yeah,
it is. I think where you're articulating it makes me think of another memory, and it's pause, pivot, pursue. Simple as that. Emotional responses are almost always wrong. They wait for it. Dog was having to leave. She's like, I am so done with this talk about emotions. I feel like I'm in control. I don't need this episode.
I'm going to go to the Chamber of Commerce, or not the Chamber, the City Council. I'm going to stand there and I'm going to file a complaint. File a complaint, I say.
I like the inflection on that one. Very well. Very well done. So the charging into emotion without a pause is dangerous. And most of the time, most of the time, you're not in an active combat situation. Mm-hmm. So we're going to remove those times where you're in a gunfight. Okay, Adam?
All right. I'll try and forget all those times. Yes.
If you can put them to the side, listen to my words. Okay. So if you're not in that situation, pause. Even if you are, honestly, pausing will make you more effective, even in marksmanship. If you're able to take just a pause and not just pull the trigger, you're going to be accurate. So that's one of the reasons that we were more effective in combat, was because pray and spray doesn't work. If you're just blasting, you can just take a minute, take a second, and be accurate. Yeah. But in civilian life, I was in an apartment, and we had a terrible downstairs neighbor, and she was influencing our children and was screaming at us through the floor. and we couldn't even move without her freaking out. And she was reporting us. We were getting evicted, an eviction notice, and it was just really bad situation. And one night, this was during Quest for Kona shooting, by the way.
That's right. I remember this. Yeah.
And so she screams at us, and I just had it. And I went downstairs and knocked on her door. She opens the door. And I said, basically, I don't want to be here in this apartment anymore. So if you can stop and try and reason with the manager to let us get out of the contract without spending $8,000 to do so, I will leave tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then she started to yell at me and accuse me of all the noise I was making. Your dog's digging through the floor. And I'm like, it's a service dog. Oh yeah, it's a service dog. It is. And I can hear you guys too. I can hear your TV. You can't hear us. And I was like, I hear people above me crying in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, sobbing in pain. And my thought is not report them like you reported me when my daughter was having a nightmare. My thought is, what's going on? That poor woman. I hope she's okay. Oh, you couldn't hear her. You can't hear us. You have a soundproof apartment.
Okay.
And then I said, I felt as the conversation went, there was just no reality. I felt this cold wash of emotion, and I stepped into her apartment.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was going to hit her. That pause made me so scared, but I paused because I was like, oh, wow. And I stepped back and I said, you don't give a shit about me, do you? And she said, no. And I said, fuck you. And I walked away, and we ended up leaving, and we had to pay to get out of there. And it was a horrible chapter that still hangs around our family. My kids, they were young and impressionable, and after that, they didn't trust people as much. And I'm still working to this day to help them understand it, because those moments of trauma in childhood were disturbing enough that it shifted the way they saw the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. These emotional chasers are the thing that allow us to see, how am I looking at the world? What's rooted in reality, and what is it that's been blurred in my vision because I'm not seeing this clearly? If I'm not able to calmly respond to the news headline, that's my problem. The world might be messed up, but my response is what I can talk about, is what I can think about, because it shouldn't disturb me. I should be like, wow, that is this war, people dying. That is so tragic. But I can sit here with calm, and I can sit here and research if I want to, and I can try and assess. But if I'm going, blah, 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 I'm getting, blah, here's my feelings, and I don't know anything about it, that's my problem. Right. And that's what we so often do, because we don't want to. We just want to continue the reality that we're living in, the worldview that we have manufactured, and will defend till we die, because no matter what evidence is given to me, I can always prove why you're wrong. The world is flat, and nothing you can do will ever prove that point until I decide to take some emotional chasers and ask myself some real question. Why do I care so deeply that the world is flat? I don't. Please, I do not believe the world is flat. Anyone listening, I'm just using that as an example of how far we can go to deny reality.
Right. I mean, how could the great god Xenu ever have an Earth that is flat? And I mean, in this universe, I mean, we have to recognize that there's a spherical shaped Earth in Xenu's great miraculous, universe. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. So well, first of all, I mean, there are tons of 1-minute videos on TikTok that will tell you exactly what's happening in this war. So you should be informed, Eric Beach. I'm just saying. But
I'm trying, man. 1 minute at a time. I'm getting there.
Yeah, no. Yeah, definitely. Again, also do not do that. Do not depend on TikTok for your news. That is not a good thing. Yeah, and when you were talking about the kids there, I think there's an important element that came up there that it feels like we can't shield our kids from the traumas of the world, like a lot of the traumas of the world. I mean, there's some that we can. There are a lot we can't. There are a lot of things that just happen and affect that. But to your point, knowing these chasers gives us a good opportunity to give them the tools, like in their day-to-day lives. What sports, what exercises, what activities are you getting into, what communities, what groups are you getting them into? Are you getting them into art and music, and helping them to have those tools early on so that they can, reflect on that. That may be a good idea early on to help them.
I don't know if I mentioned the fifth one, but it is tied to the fourth. They're all
is
tied
it TikTok?
Together.
Is it TikTok?
It is TikTok. It's 1 minute TikToks, okay. And doing the voice of that very matter of fact. Oh, I know you're serious because you're very the vocal fry. Yeah. It's not even real because what you're looking at is a fallacy of your own imagination. And if you were any kind of educated person, you would see. Like, dude, I want to clear my throat for you.
You should be a TikToker, man.
I could be a TikTok god. Yeah. Anyway,
actually, I could never be a TikToker. You don't understand.
Aren't you a TikToker?
To be a TikToker.
Aren't you on TikTok?
I got a whopping 150 followers. So look out, world.
Here comes the ego.
I know. I mean, actually, my entire handle is called. Well, actually, that's my thing. I just talk about that.
I like it.
Yeah, works out. So anyway, number 5.
Number 5 is connecting with passion. So this is similar to connecting to music, to art. This is passive in number 4 to active in number 5, which is doing the thing. It's not just listening to your favorite song and vibing to it. It's playing along with it. It's making your own music. It's building something. It's crafting. It's writing. It's journaling. It's whatever your passions are that, aren't attached necessarily to career, but they're a healthy escape that gets you moving and gets you thinking. This is a way to disconnect in a healthy way to then think about these things. And the tools that we develop, it's, in my estimation, much more valuable to develop that. It's much more valuable to understand our connection to anything, for us to develop our own understanding and bring that understanding to the world so that we can better be equipped to deal with some of these things. And food is a big one. It's been for a while. My connection with it, my children's connection with it, how we navigate it, because all of these things, the patriarchy, pronouns, the wars, the politics, all of these things are to a certain degree invisible. They're made up. Economy is a made up determination of how we assign value to labor. They're not real, even though they are, if that makes sense.
Right.
The way you engage and connect with your body, the way you feed and fuel your body, your relationship to food is fundamentally important to your life. There is no getting around it. Every other debate falls short in comparison to understanding the truth about food and your body. And that is a nuanced conversation, because I'm allergic to tree nuts and fish. So I cannot have them in my diet. There's lectin. I'm not going to get into it, but there's a ton of things that can affect your body differently than it affects mine. And I need to figure 100%. Those things out. There's a calorie intake that you need that's different from mine. There's a different amount of protein you need for whatever you want to do. There is nuance to it all. And my kids are doing my eldest is doing a nutrition blocks, and the information is false. Just like the amount of sodium you need in a day is not the same for everybody. My wife needs it a lot more because she has a condition. The information they're getting is from some script somewhere. Yeah. And she already has insecurity around food. And so she was given an assignment that was, you had to log all of your food for 7 days. And she told me that. I'm like, absolutely not.
Right. Yeah. 100%.
Because it was my daughter's birthday, and she didn't want to eat cake. And I said, why? Well, because I don't want to put that in my fitness tracker and show my teacher.
Oof.
Okay. Now I'm not emotional like rage, but that hurts my heart, because have the cake. It's your sister's birthday. I don't care about the tracker. You need to look at, how does your body feel? How's your energy level? You can have the cake. Yeah. I just want you don't have to have a big meal. You can have 6 small ones throughout the day because you're getting nauseous because you're eating too much in one meal. Spread them out. Why am I hungry? Because your body needs it. You're growing, Yeah. The thing I get upset about and emotional is this vehicle, and our relationship to it is the most fundamental relationship you or anyone else has in this life. And if I can't figure this mind-body thing out, I'm going to be reactive to it all. And so when that fundamental piece is manipulated and sold and bought by this person and sold by this person, it doesn't take into account who my daughter is, who I am, what they need, and that hurts. And I am not going to go rage against, like, oh, scream, but I am going to try and articulate. And if I can't, if I'm getting upset, I have to pause. Mm-hmm. Why? Okay. The reason I got upset, because I have in the past gotten upset with her. Sure. Like, just eat the chicken or whatever. It's because I'm afraid that I'm not raising my daughter to be independent, to be self-sufficient without me. I feel like I'm failing her. And that reality is false because I have evidence that I'm not. Mm-hmm. And if I force her into a certain way of connecting with food, I'm further perpetuating that which I'm trying to prevent her from experiencing. I'm forcing her into my way, but she's healthy. She's okay. But if I put shame onto her because I'm worried, then she's going to maybe go into unhealth. It's a tipping point. Mm-hmm. And it's her connection to it. And it's really hard because you feel as the parent, you're the sole responsibility for their health. But they are autonomous. They are the leaders of their own life. And if they can't connect with their own body in that way, I am just going to try and help them to whatever extent I can and then let them go. But with school, with social media, it's just really hard because they are the experts.
Right.
Even though they're not. But they take that word and they say, oh, you can't have that because it's too much. That'll make you too fat. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. That's incorrect. Let's walk it back. I'm going to stay calm and we're going to have a conversation, but I need you to at least validate that I might have some knowledge here and that this one person isn't God in this topic.
Yeah. And I'll tell you from very personal experience. I'll tell everybody from very personal experience on this. The eating disorder epidemic that is being fueled by social media and pressure and things like what your teacher are doing is just as much, at the very least, as the obesity epidemic. It's just less visible. It's silent. And people are suffering everywhere. And it's evidence of what's happening there. And you're absolutely right. This body is individual from everybody else. What I desire, what I need in this body to fuel my body is different from what fuels you. The way it fuels, how much, whatever. And anybody that goes out there and says that this is the only way, calorie counting is the only way, keto is the only way, or you are, or you need to track this or not eat the cake, is lying to you at the least, and directly misleading you at the worst. And it's causing an epidemic in our children that needs to end. It's tragic. People are dying because of it, and nobody knows it. And people need to know about it. People are dying because of it. And we're neglecting it because we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Nobody knows what the fuck we're doing about that. And when it comes to nutrition, even all of the nutritionists who have their little degrees and all of this kind of stuff, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. I'm sorry, but everybody knows that we need to eat more vegetables and we need to eat less candy bars. That's obvious. But you know what? When it comes to the nuances that you're talking about, about like what's best for us and how, that is something we have to figure out on our own. And it's more of a this issue than a this issue.
It is.
So sorry, that was my soapbox.
Hey, I got soapboxes, which I think I like your statement that we all know what we need to do, what's good for us, what's bad, quote unquote. For my birthday, what did I have? I had Rocky Rococo's pizza because I love it.
Hell yeah.
I haven't eaten it in a while, honestly. And the reason I almost didn't was emotionally. I said, I finally got back to 197, so I'm going to go eat pizza. I'll be 200 pounds tomorrow because I'll retain water for salt. And I'm like, and so what if I do?
Yeah.
Like, what's that going to take me? A few days, a couple weeks to be back on track where I'm like, I don't care. I'm okay. And I'm dialed in. I know how to feed my body. I know what's good for it. So that's the win. And this passion that I have, that you have, and we all do in some area where there's going to be some people who will be like, oh, food, take it or leave it, whatever. Like, I get it. Not a big deal. Some people are going to be very passionate about it. There's a difference between passion and emotional. And I'm not saying emotional. I get emotional at movies. I get emotional, right? But when we're emotionally responding, versus passionate responding, there's a key difference. Passionate response leads to love. It leads to care. It leads to a cry out because I need you to be okay. I want the best for you. Whereas emotional responding leads to shame and blame.
Mm-hmm.
It's a victim mindset. It's the accuser accusing because the victim became strong because they have an opinion and they're going to smash you with it. Passion is an outcry that leads to action, but doesn't blame and like shame in a way, except to then say, stop letting someone else make your decision for you. Take everything with a grain of salt and don't worry that you already had 2,500 milligrams today. You can have a little bit more salt.
Yeah, 2,501. Yes.
Yeah, no more. But in all of the conversation of passion is it brings the ownership to you. Mm-hmm. Because no matter what the emotion is, it's yours. You own it. It's coming from somewhere inside yourself. It just happened to be triggered by something out there or something in here for you to understand and take ownership of, take control of, and figure it out with an emotional chaser because it's going to burn, right? It's not going to go down easy. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But you have these tools that you can go do. And the reason we have to is so we can get to a place of understanding that at the most freeing reality is I get to control this path that I'm walking.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there's situations that are not going to make it feel as free, but the freedom comes when you realize there is something that you can do because wherever you go in the world, no matter how bad or good it is, you can find people suffering and you can find people exhibiting freedom.
Yeah.
Because it's a personal choice. It doesn't negate the struggling and the tragedy that befalls people and situations. But no matter where, even in the Auschwitz, there was people that came out of that talking about how they survived because they never lost hope. They found positivity. If they can do that, being starved and a victim of genocide, there's something there that we can take and say, not to say like, oh, well, I shouldn't care about my traumas. Mm-hmm. No, look at the example. It's all inside yourself. You just have to find ways that allow you to journey inward with less emotional volatility. And part of that we'll get into as well as understanding the language of emotions. These emotional responses are a language. Some might say, I used to say it was like one of the dialects of God communicating to us. It's a reverberation of a thread in the universe inside of ourselves saying, this is what you're needing to address. It's the tip of the iceberg and you got to journey in. And so when we learn to do that, when we read a headline, when we read a comment, when someone says something we don't agree with and we're like, I need to fight this person because my kid lost a hockey game and the ref screwed me, so I'm going to go fight the ref. All of these things are an emotional response that we're missing and we're trying to control outside when all the control needs to be done inside. And if we do that, we're not emotionally responding. We're responding through passion, which is rooted in love and hope. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm going to end this conversation, and we'll build into this. I mean, there's going to be webinars I think we'll have to get into where we talk about the language of emotion because it's a language we don't know. You know, we don't teach. We teach Spanish, we teach German, but we don't. I don't even know if kids are ready for it because we need to give them freedom to play. Right. And as they get older, even in their 20s, it's like now we can talk about health. Now we can talk about emotion. Now we can talk about these things. But as a kid, it's like you need to be free to play and bang yourself up a little bit, explore, find out what you like, find out what you don't. That's what school should be, is a buffet that we sample all of these sections of life instead of following a strict structure of competencies. Like I remember they asked if my kids could stack blocks at a certain age, and I'm like, no. They've never tried. No, what, autistic? No, they just never. They don't tie knots. It doesn't come up.
Right.
So we have all these funny metrics that say we're on track, but it's kids, man. Like they need the best thing we can do for them is allow them to find out who the hell they are and what they love, so they can carry that with them through the rest of their life. Not education equals shame.
So true. And I'll close with like a quote from Space Ghost. You're talking about freedom.
I love it.
So with freedom comes responsibility. And then to quote Brack from that very same episode, with freedom comes nudity.
Space Coast to Coast. One of the greatest shows of all time.
Absolutely, 100%.
You don't know it? You're too young. Go check it out. Adult
Those
Swim.
of us over 40 know what will know what we're talking about.
Which was funny that I think they realized their demographic aged, so they had to create something to keep the attention of the adults that were now leaving cartoons, and they succeeded.
Yeah, they did.
I give you Aquatine Hunger Force. All right, well, that's going to do it for now, and until next time, journey well, my friends.
Bye.